Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and yes, this house is on the lot backwards. I forgot that the lighting on this lot low-key sucks, so I switched it around for screenshots and figured I would just leave it here for the intro. As you can see, today we are going into the Cape Cod, which is on the smaller side of the Colonials. This is an extremely beginner-friendly build. Now in the past I have gotten Cape Cod and Dutch mixed up. I will be correcting that in this series. This is a Cape Cod and we'll be doing the Dutch later on in the month. Now a Cape Cod can technically be any size, as with most builds. However, today we're specifically talking about the more original Cape Cod cottages, which tend to be quite small. We are building a 2-bedroom today, and they could go up to 4, 5, maybe 6 with smaller bedrooms upstairs. Of course, it's America, we've supersized everything, including little cottages, so it's not uncommon now to find much bigger versions. This build style has been around for a really long time, so of course it's been adapted to various, I almost said worlds, but various states and climates and needs and all that. So if we're talking about the classic Cape Cod, it tends to be on the smaller side. You're going to have odd or even number of symmetrical, very narrow dormers up top. It'll typically be 1.5 stories, which means the bottom story is a full story and then the top story is going to take up about half of the footprint. I'll get more into that when we actually start building. The slope of the roof is about mid-range, doesn't tend to be too steep, won't be too shallow. Typically it will be a white-sided house with black accents. Black shuttered windows specifically are extremely common. Of course, this is The Sims 4. Use whatever colors speak to you. And with all of that out of the way, let's get building. We're starting on a 20 by 15 lot here in Newcrest today. I'm going to start with a 10 by 11 rectangle, which is just 2 in from the sides of the lot and then 10 back. You want this wall to be at least 9 if you want to have any sort of usable second story, and probably no more than 12 or 13 unless you want to start playing a little more with roof pitch. To keep this beginner friendly, you basically want to have 3 tiles and then however wide you want your second story to be, and then 3 more tiles. So upstairs, because I did it 10 deep, that'll be 3 tiles in, 4 tiles wide, and then another 3 tiles. While we're up here, I'm also going to add my dormers. Cape Cod tends to have quite narrow dormers, 1, maybe 2 tiles wide. So I'm going to put one here, and here, and here, fairly spaced out, and then the same on the back. Now, if you've ever been in a house like this where you have sort of the second story inside the roof, which you could just pretend is here for a second, you know that you don't actually have straight up and down walls like this. You'll actually have a bit of a slope where the roof intersects, and then a smaller short wall and all that. Now, I am going to show you how you can sort of get a similar look here in the game. You can totally play in the space without it, but I just wanted to show you how to do that, so that will be coming in just a second. First though, I want to finish addressing the floor plan. Downstairs is where you're going to have the majority of your living space, pretty much split in half, where you're going to have your front entry and the living area here, and then kitchen and dining over here. So, we're going to go 4 tiles in and just draw a straight wall this way, and then draw another wall right here. We're going to put our stairs in right here. Usually the stairs would go sort of on the back of the build, but that would put it right up against the roof, and that's just not going to work. But if we put them here, that actually uses up this dormer, which would otherwise be pretty unusable space since it is so narrow. Then we'll just divide this into 2 decent sized bedrooms. Downstairs, we're going to split this in half again, so we have a dining and a kitchen room here. And because we have this extra space, this could be an additional bedroom. I'm going to place a bathroom here and a small either bedroom or office space. Fireplaces in traditional Cape Cods will be more centered in the living room and overall more toward the center of the build. Cape Cod revivals tend to actually have fireplaces more on the outside of the build. So that's a little thing you can look for when you're looking at reference images. Let's just throw down a few doors here real quick. I like to use window doors in a nice light color between like living spaces and things, so I'm going to put that door there and into the office space. A smaller windowed door into the kitchen just to save room for counters and all of that. An arch between the rooms, and we should probably use a solid door for the bathroom. Although I'm going to keep this paneled door since it mimics the look of this one, which has similar panes to this one. Upstairs, unless you have move objects on, you can't place 2 doors directly across from each other, so you may have to stagger them a bit, but that's just fine. And that pretty much does it for the inside. Cape Cods aren't known for being flashy, so just a plain old rectangular arch here or another set of doors will be just fine. Again, they tend to be quite small, and in the smallest ones of them, you might not even have necessarily like walls down here other than the bathroom. Everything will just sort of be together. Makes a great tiny home in that sense. Let's do this roof. Because we're using the short wall height here and we're 3 tiles in, that means you don't actually have to do anything funky with the roof. You'll just grab your half gable and that's it. If you want to have a little more visibility into the space, you can hold shift to just pull this one eave down and then place the same roof piece on the back. Colonials are kind of hit and miss when it comes to eaves. You'll either have very small ones like this or none whatsoever. If you're using a reference image, I would recommend checking that. I prefer the look of eaves, so unless it specifically doesn't have eaves, like the Greek Revival, I tend to just leave them at this default. And then up top, all you have to do is grab a gable, and that finishes off your roof. No weird pitch adjustment. Pushing in the one eave is totally optional, and you have a very nice little roof there. And then for these guys, same thing. You're just going to make your gable 1 tile wide, and then copy and place it on your dormers. If you'd like more information on dormers, I have a whole video about that, which I'll link up here. Highly recommend checking it out if you want to add dormers to any build. I want to change the light up so we can see a little better. We also need to add a chimney before I forget, again toward the center of your build. I like this sort of weathered brick one. And that's pretty much the basic shape of a Cape Cod. What you're going to be looking at is a fairly small rectangular base with sort of a half story above. In Sims World, I just say that if this story takes up about half of the sort of footprint of the first story, you'll be using the short height walls, and if you put it on a foundation, it's probably only going to be about 1. If you're looking for something similar, but perhaps with larger dormers, I highly recommend sticking around for our Dutch Colonial video, which will be out on the 31st. And if you're just looking for something much larger overall, I highly recommend subscribing and checking out the Georgian Colonial. That video will be up on the 13th, and basically it's if a Cape Cod grew up, went to business school, and now owns a Fortune 500 company. Like, it is an impressive colonial, massive compared to this little guy. Aside from its characteristic small shape and narrow dormers, another couple of things that really set the Cape Cod apart as a unique style are what you put on the outside. Some narrow white siding is the most common choice for the exterior of the build. Of course, this is The Sims 4. I will not be sending the Colonial Police after you if you choose a color other than white. The front door will be fairly simple but have windows. And black and white is a super common sort of color scheme. For windows, you're going to want pretty much anything double hung, specifically with shutters. And those will be placed symmetrically on either side of the build. Now I have a wall here, so if I want to place the window here, I will have to turn on Move Objects. I've gone over that in other videos, but if you've missed it, it's not as scary as it sounds. Hit Ctrl-Shift-C, type in bb.moveobjects, and you should get a confirmation code. Again, I just turned mine off. And if it doesn't give you a code, try typing bb.moveobjects on and then hitting enter, and you should be good to go. Also, double hung window just means that it looks like you could slide it up to open. So this is, hang on. So this would be a double hung window where you can sort of see it looks like you can slide it open, whereas this is not. This one you can't open. So I'll actually take this one, and it's not placing quite where I want it, so I'm going to hit F5, and that will let me place it right there front and center. So I'm going to use some combination of the shuttered and non-shuttered versions of these windows around my build. Now in the kitchen, I do want my windows to be placed a little higher since I will have some cabinets in there, so I'm just going to place a cabinet so we can get them at the right height. And then we have to decide if we want to keep the same windows and just place them significantly higher. If we want to grab some smaller windows that would probably stay at the same sort of height, or if we just want to throw in a complete curveball. We also have the option of just raising all the windows along this wall and just pretending it's not obvious from the outside. Again, lots of options for how you place your windows, but hopefully that'll give you some ideas. You'll typically have some sort of back door off the kitchen, or if your build is large enough to have sort of this centralized hallway, you'll have it at the end of that. I'm just going to use the exact same door I used on the front, because it's easy. As far as builds go, this one is fairly window heavy. You definitely want a lot of light and airflow being able to come through these homes. Of course, we can't actually open windows in The Sims 4, but that's why this is Build Like a Nerd, because I gave you details that don't actually matter. Now, since this is built to look like an older construction, I'm going to want something that looks fairly weathered on the roof, possibly something like this or this. I always prefer darker colors on my roof, but you do you. And I'm going to add some black trim. I think that's shaping up fairly nicely. If you want your front door to feel a little fancier, here's a quick trick. You can grab this flat square and sort of make yourself a little front stoop. Grab a gabled roof And you're actually going to pitch this down a bit. And add a couple of columns. Could also add a spandrel. Although these are a bit fancy for my taste. If you're just playing with the base game and only have these fancy spandrels, a great tip is to grab this beveled roof trim and just place it on the bottom of your roof. That sort of gives it that supporting beam look, which is very nice. Add some bricks, and you have a nice little front entry. This is also helpful if you decide to raise up your foundation, which again will probably be 1 at the highest. These tend to be quite low to the ground homes. You should always keep the environment in mind wherever you're building. For example, if you wanted to build a Cape Cod in the desert, you'd probably change out the brick for tile. You might have some more indoor-outdoor living spaces sort of inside the build. You may lower the pitch of the roof a bit and add tile to help it blend into the world a bit more. A lot of these style choices aren't just made for aesthetics, but are actually made to be better for the world that it's in. Also, if we have any houses here in Michigan where I live, it's a very wet state. We get a lot of really heavy rain in the spring and fall. We have lakes literally surrounding us too, so a lot of groundwater, and it's just not uncommon for our yards to get flooded. So we tend to have slightly higher foundations so that our floors don't get wet. But in drier areas, you want to keep your build closer to the ground and have tiles to help keep the house cool. So stuff like that is just important to keep in mind if you want your build to sort of blend into the world around it, regardless of the base architectural style you're going for. Now let's show you that roof hack I was talking about. Pop over into your doorways and just grab a nice wide arch. This is going to open up your sort of roof space. And anywhere that a normal sized door will fit, if I hold Alt you can sort of see that I can slide it around a bit. Anywhere that a normal sized door will fit, your adult Sims should be able to function just fine. So we can actually grab a dresser and place it about a half tile in like that. It won't clip through the roof, it gives you a little bit more floor space to play with, and it gives you a little bit of that feel of actually having access under the roof. And no, you cannot use spandrels because that will sort of dictate this as being open directly to the roof. Whereas what the doorway does is it sort of simultaneously cuts between your interior wall and the walls of the roof piece. Before we address how to finish the inside, I of course have to do my little pitch. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video, if you find the content helpful. By liking this video and subscribing, you're letting YouTube know that this is valuable content, and that pushes it out to other people who may also appreciate just too much information on random home styles. My goal is to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the month. I feel like that's a good gauge of finding out whether or not this series is helpful to builders out there, and if it is helpful, I'd love to continue it. However, these videos do take a lot of work. This is the first series that I've done where I've actually written out full scripts for these videos, so you may notice they're all following a similar flow. That's because I've put hours into research, into scripting, all that stuff, so subscribing really lets me know that you appreciate that work and that it's worth me continuing. Also, if you're interested in all these researches and articles and reference images that I keep talking about, those are all linked together in a Pinterest board, which is of course in the video description down below. Feel free to follow me on there. You'll kind of get a sneak peek of the other styles coming up because I have boards all about those too. Just dozens and dozens and dozens of types of homes all organized into boards as best as I can get it. And if you notice that any of those are wrong, feel free to let me know. I'm a human, you're a human, we all make mistakes sometimes, and while I am doing my very best to make sure I give you the most correct information possible, I acknowledge that I don't always do that perfectly. So with all that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to leave your questions, suggestions, and corrections in the comments down below, and let's finish up this cute little Cape Cod. Inside you're going to be looking at mostly a lot of lighter colors. I'm just going to be grabbing some plain white walls to finish mine off with. You can use colors in here, but again, they're probably going to be mostly fairly light. Whether you leave the bottom of your stairs as a wall or if you open it up for a little bit of extra space is totally up to you. One of my personal favorite things to do with this under the stairs space is add a little activity desk. This works just great. Your kids can access it. You can put some pet stuff down there too if you have that. Inside you're going to be looking at mostly wooden flooring, typically of a slightly lighter color as those are the woods that were available in the area. Just something like this will serve us just fine. Bathroom, nothing too special. Depending on the age of the house that you're looking at, that'll sort of dictate whether it has like a bathtub or a shower and where in the house it is. This one's just sort of squeezed in here. Kitchens, again, if we're talking about slightly older constructions, you're going to have light wooden cabinets. Although if you're on a budget, the Cape Cod is great for budget building and you can just grab some of these Blandco counters in a nice light color. I think I'll put my fridge here. I'll have a sink, add your fridge, stove, A sink looking out a window is always adorable and very easily done with the Cape Cod, as it is a heavily windowed build. Over here you could add an island, a kitchen table, some cabinets. Something like a china hutch would go really well as well. Now upstairs, again, typically the most narrow you're going to want your base floor is going to be 9 tiles, which would bring this down to 3 tiles. You can still fit a full-size bed in a 3-tile space, even without move objects on. Just place it right in the middle like this, and your Sims can actually walk in this half-tile space. However, we have a full 4 tiles, so we don't have to worry about that too much. But even with that being said, having the dresser pushed off inside the wall here is great. And I'll bring a sim in too to playtest that. It's worked the last few times I've done it, but we've also had a few game updates, so better safe than sorry. Alright, the bad news is I tried a couple of things and my sim can't seem to actually access this dresser, which, not gonna lie, is pretty frustrating because it's worked in the past. I'm going to have to do a little bit more work on this because I have done so many like under roof areas that have worked just fine before, so I'm kind of frustrated this one is not working. You can still definitely use this for like decorative elements, and once I figure out what's going on with the roof, I'll try to make a short about how to actually make this work. Now let's talk landscaping. Low profile, very simple home. You're going to get a lot of inspiration from the world around you, so pulling in some of these plants would probably be our best bet. It's going to be stuck pretty close to the house. So something like these small hedges, scaled down one, are great for builds like this. And if you want these particular flowers, we have the purple perennial flowers, although those appear to be a scaled up one, the dull daisies, and the red flowers, which look kind of pink, but whatever. As always, I do recommend landscaping with move objects on. It just makes the whole experience so much easier. It lets you move your plants closer together, closer to the foundation of the build, all that good stuff. You can place multiple plants at one time by holding shift, and I also hold alt while I'm doing this so that I can sort of rotate them more exactly and place them more, well, exactly, just not quite aligning to the grid. If you're interested in learning more about landscaping, I highly recommend checking out this video up here. I'm going to add some rocks, again scaling up by just using those bracket keys. The front path will probably be a brick. I'm guessing I'd want it to actually align. There we go. The last thing that we'll want to do is add some terrain paint. Grab your brush, bring it to whatever size is appropriate for your area. I tend to use this Smarter Starter soil. I just like the muddy look that it gives, and adjust your softness, not all the way to soft, but not quite in the middle, somewhere in between. You can then use that to just go along the edges of your path, sort of blend that in. That's also a really great idea if you're going to use terrain paint for your path. Paint under your plants, which makes them just look a little more established and helps them not blend into the lawn so much. And along your foundation. This sort of acts as an outline for your build, gives you a little bit of a lift off the grass again, and off your back door. If you don't really want to have like a patio or anything, you can just add a little bit of mud to make it look more used. That's how you'd build a Cape Cod. For a quick little refresher, relatively small footprint with a rectangle on the bottom and about a half of a second story on top. Again, that just means that the top story takes up about half of like the footprint of the original story. Dormers are going to be evenly spaced. Even or odd number doesn't really matter, but they will only be 1, maybe 2 tiles wide. Very rare though, and that's typically in much larger builds than this. Downstairs, you're going to see your main living area include the entry area. Unlike a lot of other colonials, the hallway down the middle isn't necessarily a staple. It just sort of depends on the overall flow and size of the space. It worked out well for this one, so I have a hallway, but that's not necessarily necessary. Bathroom will be wherever it fits, and your kitchen and dining area will be on the opposite side of the house as to your living space. Bedrooms are typically upstairs. If the upstairs is smaller than this, it's totally fine to just like use a ladder and just have a large open sleeping area if you're going for more of that rustic feel. But having stairs and a couple of actual like real bedrooms is totally fine as well. Inside you're going to see a lot of lighter colors. Outside, pretty much exclusively going to see some sort of weathered old shingle, white siding, and black accents in the doors, shutters, and possibly window frames as well. In the older builds, fireplaces will be centralized with a chimney toward the middle of your roof. In newer builds, you may see the fireplace on the outside of the build with a chimney up the side. And that's what I've got for a Cape Cod for you guys today. Kinda bummed the lighting isn't better on the slot. Again, it will be available on the gallery, and of course check out my Pinterest board. All the links are in the video description, as well as a few fun facts that I may have cut out of this video for time purposes. I am super excited to be bringing this series to you guys. If you've missed any of the other uploads in this series, I highly recommend checking out this top card, which is this whole Build Like a Nerd series, all the videos we've done so far, and check out this bottom card, which is just a video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today, and I am very much looking forward to building with you again tomorrow. Bye!